My name is Thomas Kaufman. Welcome back to another episode of The Athlete Unfiltered. We are at the Athlete Spot in Nixon, Missouri. This is my office. This is where I treat patients. And the other side of the other room that you guys can't see on Instagram or Facebook, actually YouTube. This is YouTube. Um, I have my little strength gym where I have athletes perform skills and movements, either loaded or unloaded, in order to address them and assess them better. And talking about addressing movements, today we're going to be talking about preventative sports medicine and what it is, why it matters, and what are some things that you can do at home to prevent a few things. And let's go ahead and get started. Now, today's episode is not sponsored by anybody. We actually don't have sponsors for our episodes. So if you want to, you can sponsor us by purchasing a cup of coffee. Link below. Let's get back to our cool episode today. Anyway, we're talking about preventative sports medicine. So, what is preventative sports medicine? Now, it's in the name, preventative, right? What are we trying to prevent? Well, it's important that we talk about what we can't prevent. We can't prevent every injury. Injuries are going to happen. They are an inherent risk of every activity that we do, any sporting event that we do, anything, right? You walk, the risk is that you are going to trip and then you're going to fall. If you run, you're just going to trip and fall faster, right? That's the risk. So when we are talking about preventative sports medicine, we're talking about factors that we can address, identify, and assess that are going to help us reduce the risk of injuries, mostly unnecessary injuries. And we'll talk about what unnecessary injuries are. But we're also looking at these factors to see what we can improve so that we can give our athletes the best environment, whether it's at school, at home, or in training, to be successful athletes today and in the future. So, what are unnecessary injuries? Well, unnecessary injuries are injuries that could be prevented if there was a proper assessment, if there was a proper load management, etc. So, when we're looking at unnecessary injuries, there's two main categories that we've separated them in. The first one is the psychological category, and unnecessary injuries here are burnout, stress, anxiety, mental fatigue, right? Those are part of the psychological category. We're trying to minimize those. And then on the physical category, we have overuse injuries like tendinopathies, muscle strains, repetitive stress injuries such as stress fractures, shin splints, right? Those are some examples of both psychological and physical unnecessary injuries. So, when we're looking through the lens of preventative sports medicine, we're looking at a variety of factors that are going to help us address these two main categories. Now, from the physical perspective, we can look into biomechanics. Is the athlete moving adequately? Do they have the capacity to get into certain positions? Are they able to get in and out of positions with optimal movement, optimal force, right? Then we can also look into load management. A lot of times, injuries can be prevented if we look at their load, uh, or weekly load, daily load, right? And when we're looking at load management, we're not just looking at how heavy they're lifting, but also repetitions, how often they're running, how long they're running, how many strides are they aiming for, how much physical stress, load, right, is being applied to the system, and the other side of that coin is how are they recovering? Are they able to recover? Okay. And now, when we're looking at the recovery of the athlete, there are other factors that we have to take into consideration. Are they sleeping well? Are they eating enough? Are they drinking enough water? Are they managing their physical and mental stress adequately? And do they have the recovery strategies in place for their specific skill, their skill level, their sport, and their person, individual person, necessary for them to overcome and recover properly? Now, those go into deeper categories. On sleep, we can talk about, are they sleeping long, long enough, right? Are they getting anywhere between 8 and 9 hours of sleep, especially if they're young? If you're a little older, 6 to 8 hours. Are you sleeping in a cool environment where it's too hot, where you keep tossing and turning, you're not getting enough sleep, etc.? Are you stressed, waking up every single hour of the night? Are you are you tossing and turning? Are you developing signs of insomnia? So some of these are the questions that we would start asking just to improve their quality of sleep, just to improve this portion of their recovery. When it comes to nutrition, we can start asking them, are you eating enough? That is the first question that we typically ask our athletes. Are you eating enough? And most of the time, athletes think they're eating enough, but they're not eating that much. We've seen it over the last couple of years with pretty much every single one of our athletes. They're typically under consuming food, not recovering properly, or if they are actually consuming enough food, they're not actually getting the nutrients that they need. They may be getting a little bit too much of a different nutrient when they should be getting a little bit more of the other one. And when we're talking about nutrients, we're talking about proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, right? Um, Youth athletics, they get a lot of calories because they basically consume everything that is in sight except for vegetables. Um, that's one of those. I think I don't have kids yet, so can't really tell you that. But from my nieces and nephews, that is one that is still avoided as an 8 or 9 year old. But anyway, some of them actually do eat some carrots and broccoli, but that's anyway. So we're looking at all these different factors from the preventative aspect, right? We're looking at improving all of these factors to reduce unnecessary injuries. So why does it matter that we improve all of these factors? Well, like we mentioned earlier, uh, preventative sports medicine is not just about preventing unnecessary injuries, it is also so that athletes can develop properly in their sport, so that they can enjoy it and they can actually perform at their highest level as they continuously grow and develop in their sport. That is not only going to translate between 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, but it's also going to develop habits, healthy habits that are going to lead to better quality of life as they get older. We can look from the social perspective. An athlete who participates in sports tends to be a more um, open individual later on in life and continue to participate in sports. So they stay active through their lifestyle. Somebody who suffers a lot of injuries, on the other hand, might start to reduce um, their athletic involvement because they now believe that they are higher risk of injuries. And that is true. Once there is an injury, there's a higher likelihood of the injury repeating itself again. Uh, for those that have had hamstring strains, that is a thing, right? If you have a hamstring strain once, the likelihood of the hamstring strain to come in again, it's no longer zero. It's actually a higher percentage. And I'm not going to give you numbers because off the top of my head, I can't remember them. So that is why it is important that we look into preventative sports medicine, not only to reduce unnecessary injuries, but to give our athletes the best environment possible in order for them to be successful, happy, and develop adequately in sports and in their personal lives. One of the reasons why athletes from young ages or why young kids should participate in sports is because it, one, opens them up socially. So it is a big thing, especially right now after COVID happened. It's important that we help our athletes, and as an athlete, it's important that we stay social. We continue to communicate with other individuals, especially with social media and all that stuff. It's very easy to just hear negative opinions from somebody else across the screen. but it's very hard to have a conversation in person. So sports allow that. They allow for athletes to communicate in person. They allow for different points of view to be communicated, and they allow for proper social interactions. Now, what are some things that we can do at home as athletes and as parents of athletes in order to, one, help them prevent some injuries? Well, we're going to be talking foundation here, right? Um, sleep. Sleep is one of the most important things that we can do as athletes and as parents of athletes to help our athletes improve or actually recover properly, right? And reduce the risk of injury. Two, open communication with your coach. If you're an athlete, be open and honest with your coach when you don't feel 100%, when you don't feel that you have it in you to run 400 meters, when you don't feel that a joint or a muscle is actually feeling good, right? You might be a little too sore. You might be actually in pain. Um, in those instances, communicate with your coach and let them know, that something doesn't feel right. Maybe they're going to come up with a recovery session for you, which would be a good idea. If you are a parent of an athlete, talk to your athletes, right? How do you feel today? Are there any achy joints? Are there any pains? Be open with them. This hopefully will help them be honest with you and tell you if they don't feel okay. But if they don't, this is something that you can now look for a preventative sports medicine physician, like we're here at the athlete spot, and bring your athlete or take your athlete and have them assessed. Lastly, is making sure that athletes are getting enough food. One of the main nutrients that most people actually lack in is protein. A lot of times we see athletes say, "Oh, I'm eating a ton of protein, like eggs in the morning, and then I have steak at night, and all that stuff." And we have them track their macros, and they are like 500 to 800 calories below what they should be, and their protein intake is 40% of what it should be. So in those instances, we just have the conversation with the athlete and make sure that they start increasing their protein intake. And by that time, their calories are where they're supposed to be, their protein intake is where they're supposed to be, and all of a sudden they have more energy. All of a sudden they feel stronger. All of a sudden they're feeling much better about their body. So making sure that your athlete is eating enough calories and proper nutrition is going to be key. So, as an athlete, here's a couple of things that you can do at home. And if you are a parent of an athlete, you can do these things as well, right? One, sleep management. So, sleep management is important. We want to make sure that, one, you're getting enough hours in your sleep, but we want to make sure that you're getting quality of sleep. So keeping a cooler room, making sure that it's dark, making sure that it's scheduled in a sense, right? If you're an older athlete, it may not be as easy to schedule it, but if you are a parent of a young athlete, you can schedule sleep time. So make sure that they are getting adequate sleep. Nutrition, make sure that you are eating enough and eating enough of the right foods. A lot of times we see athletes that are not consuming enough protein and therefore they're not consuming enough calories. Um, Once we increase the protein intake to what it should be, all of a sudden our athletes are feeling better, feeling more energized, feeling stronger. Then you can start changing uh, nutrients a little bit to meet some, aesthetic goals or performance goals. And then finally, we're looking at stress management. Now, stress management can go very deep, right? We have stress with coaches and participating in sports. We have stress at school if you're a parent of an athlete, or if you're an athlete in college, or are considering, a master's degree or a doctorate degree, or if you are a a workforce athlete that participates in weekend events and CrossFit competitions, and you have a 9 to 5 job, that is going to be part of your stress, right? So being able to manage uh, those stressors as best as possible is going to be most beneficial for your recovery, and it's going to reduce a lot of that mental stress that might lead to burnout, that might lead to mental fatigue. Mental fatigue is not good for physical interactions either, right? So if you are not thinking clearly and you're not thinking of the movements, a lot of times that is going to increase your risk of an injury, especially in complex movements like wrestling, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, weightlifting, etc. So overall, the things that you can do today is one, sleep better, get enough food in your system, quality food too, right? Manage your stress, and finally, get an assessment of your biomechanics. Okay. If you are struggling to get into proper position, if you're struggling to hit depth in certain movements, if you're struggling with certain skills at your sport today, get assessed and make sure that one, you're working within your means and you can reduce the risk of injury secondary to biomechanical limitations. If you're looking for some help and you want to improve your performance and you want to make sure that you are doing everything that you can to one, reduce the risk of injuries, improve your performance, and improve your quality of life, and you want some help, send us a message at the underscore athlete spot on Instagram, and we can talk about which ways we can help you. If you are a parent of a youth athlete, check out our youth membership. In that youth membership, we're giving unlimited care, unlimited assessments to our youth athletes to make sure that they develop properly and that they have the best chances of success by monitoring their stress week to week. So, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening and watching this video all the way to the end. I will see you guys next week. Next week, we're actually going to be talking about stress injuries in runners. So if you are a runner or you know of a runner, let them know that next week our new podcast launching. Ciao.